They thought she was nobody. Just a quiet, plain woman sitting at the back of the room, dressed modestly, saying very little. No one paid her much attention, certainly not the wealthy family members in designer clothes and polished shoes, who whispered and smirked, confident that the fortune being discussed today belonged to them. They were sure of their place in the will. After all, they were blood. She was, well, just the housekeeper. Or so they thought. The air inside the lawyer's office was thick with tension as the reading of the will began. Some leaned forward with anticipation, others crossed their arms, already mentally counting the money and properties they assumed were theirs. But when the name of the deceased's most trusted beneficiary was announced, the room fell silent. Then came the gasps, the stares, the outrage. This simple woman, the one they had looked down on for years, was about to change everything. She had been kind, loyal, and quiet, never demanding anything, never asking for recognition. But behind that gentle smile was a truth none of them saw coming. As the details unfolded, it became clear she wasn't just some outsider. She had shared a bond with the deceased that went far deeper than wealth or family ties. And what was hidden in that would shake the very foundation of the proud family's world. But just as the lawyer turned the page to reveal the final clause, one that would stun the room even further, a voice suddenly interrupted, cold, sharp, and full of disbelief. Someone wasn't going to let this happen without a fight. Stay with us to find out what happens when pride, secrets, and one woman's quiet strength collide in the most unexpected way. The voice that cut through the silence belonged to Daniel, the eldest grandson. His face turned red as he stood up, pointing a trembling finger at her. "This has to be a mistake," he said, his voice rising. "She's just the maid. She doesn't belong in this room, let alone in this will." Eyes turned to the woman again. Emma, her name was. She didn't flinch. She didn't speak. She simply looked at the lawyer, waiting for him to continue. But Daniel wasn't done. He laughed bitterly and turned to the others in the room, hoping for support. "We all know Grandpa wouldn't do something like this. She probably manipulated him. Took advantage while he was sick." But those who really knew the old man, Mr. Harland, the sharp and stubborn head of the family, understood one thing. He didn't trust easily, and he never did anything he didn't mean to. If Emma's name was in that will, it was for a reason. Still, the rest of the family sat in disbelief. Whispers filled the room. "Did you see the way she's dressed? She's not even one of us. There must be something she's hiding." They remembered how she had always been in the background, tidying up after dinners, quietly serving tea, offering a kind smile. They never asked about her life, never cared where she went when the day ended. But now all eyes were on her. Who was she, really? The lawyer cleared his throat and continued reading. Every sentence added more weight. Properties, accounts, a family estate, all to Emma. The storm in the room grew louder, but Emma stayed calm, her hands folded in her lap. What no one knew yet was that the biggest secret hadn't even been revealed. And when it was, everything would change. As the lawyer continued, Daniel stormed out, slamming the door behind him. The others sat frozen, trying to process what they had just heard. Among them was Margaret, Mr. Harland's only daughter. She hadn't said a word since the reading began, but her eyes never left Emma. Unlike the rest, Margaret knew there had been something between her father and Emma, something unspoken, something that had always made her uneasy. Still, she had never imagined this. Meanwhile, in the far corner, Jacob, one of the younger cousins, sat quietly, thinking. He remembered something, how his grandfather used to sit out on the porch for hours, talking to someone in the early evenings. He had always assumed it was a neighbor or a friend, but now he realized it was Emma. All those conversations, those laughs, they weren't nothing. There was a history here, one no one had bothered to see. The conflict wasn't just about money. It was about pride, control, and the fragile image this family had built for themselves. They were used to being seen as important, respected, above everyone else. And now someone they considered beneath them had suddenly become the center of it all. Emma sat silently, but her mind wasn't calm. She had promised Mr. Harland she would honor his wishes, no matter what. But she hadn't expected this kind of fury, this level of resentment. She knew there was more to come, documents, letters, things she'd been entrusted with. And some of it would hurt people in the room. Still, she owed him the truth. Down the hallway, Daniel was already making phone calls. He wanted answers, and if he couldn't find any, he'd create his own. As the tension in the family deepened, the real battle was only just beginning. That night, the estate was anything but quiet. The family had stayed behind, demanding answers. Emma, still calm but clearly weary, remained in the drawing room as questions flew like knives. What did you do to him? Did he change the will while he was sick? Are you even legally allowed to keep this? The lawyer stepped in now and then, reminding them that everything was documented, witnessed, and signed under full capacity. But logic didn't ease bruised egos. Emma excused herself briefly and returned with a small wooden box. One Mr. Harland had given her weeks before his passing. The room grew still. She placed it gently on the table, but didn't open it. He asked me to share what's in here when the time was right, she said. And I think that time is coming soon. Margaret, who had been holding back, finally spoke up. My father wasn't a fool. If he trusted you with something this important, there's more going on, isn't there? Her voice was soft, but her eyes were sharp. Emma met her gaze and nodded once. Yes, there's a reason he left everything to me. It wasn't just about the money. It was about setting something right. Meanwhile, Daniel hadn't gone far. He'd called a private investigator, determined to dig into Emma's past. I want to know everything, where she came from, who she's connected to. Anything I can use to stop this. He snapped over the phone. His pride couldn't accept this loss. He needed a reason, something to prove she didn't deserve it. As midnight approached, the family sat in tense silence. The box remained closed, but its presence seemed to pull every emotion to the surface. Inside it lay the truth, and once it came out, there would be no going back. The silence broke when the lawyer received a sudden call. He stepped into the hallway, speaking in hushed tones. When he returned, his expression had changed. He cleared his throat, holding a folded document in his hand. I've just been informed of a codicil, an amendment to the will, that was discovered in Mr. Harland's personal vault this afternoon, he said. It was time-stamped and verified. It adds one final instruction. Everyone straightened. Even Emma's face shifted slightly, unsure of what this could mean. The lawyer unfolded the paper, eyes scanning the lines quickly before continuing. Mr. Harland requested that a DNA test be completed before the full transfer of assets. The test has already been submitted. Results will arrive in 24 hours. Gasps filled the room. Daniel immediately stepped forward. He thought she might be related. That's insane. This changes everything. Emma didn't speak, but her fingers gripped the arms of her chair. She had never known her real parents. Mr. Harland had once hinted that they had crossed paths long ago, but he never gave details. Could this be why he took her in quietly, watched over her from a distance, and eventually brought her into his life more fully? Margaret looked shaken. She turned to the lawyer. Are you saying she could be family? The idea rattled everyone. If Emma wasn't just a stranger, but blood, that would explain everything. and also threaten every claim the others believed they had. Meanwhile, Daniel's investigator called back. "I found something. You're not going to like it," he said. Daniel stepped out to hear more. Inside the room, tension thickened. The box still sat unopened, the test results on the way. And now a deeper connection loomed over everyone. Whatever came next would change not just the inheritance, but the family itself. The following day, the family gathered again in the drawing room, their nerves raw from a sleepless night. The air felt heavier than before. The lawyer arrived just past noon, holding a sealed envelope. All eyes locked on him as he took a seat and opened it. "The DNA results are in," he said, his voice steady. "Emma is, in fact, Mr. Harlan's biological daughter." Shock rippled through the room. Margaret gasped, her hand covering her mouth. Daniel stood frozen, his anger replaced by disbelief. The room spun with realization. Emma, the woman they dismissed as an outsider, wasn't just a part of the family. She was his only direct heir. Emma's eyes welled up, but she didn't cry. Mr. Harlan had told her she was important to him, but he'd never admitted the truth. Now she understood why he had always treated her with such quiet care. He had been trying to protect her from the cruelty he feared this very room might show. As emotions swirled, Emma reached for the wooden box. Slowly, she opened it. Inside were letters, handwritten by Mr. Harlan, along with old photos of a young woman who looked just like Emma. One letter was addressed to the family. She handed it to the lawyer to read aloud. In the letter, Mr. Harlan confessed to a long-ago relationship kept secret due to social pressure. Emma had been born from that union and raised elsewhere for her safety. "She is not just my child," he wrote. "She is the best part of me." Tears fell quietly around the room. But just as calm began to return, Daniel re-entered, holding a file. "That's not all," he said coldly. "She wasn't the only secret. There's someone else tied to this family, and they're coming here." All eyes turned to Daniel, the tension in the room rising again. He tossed the file onto the table. "I found records of another child, someone born years before Emma. A boy. No name listed. Just adoption papers signed by Mr. Harlan himself." Emma's breath caught. She had always felt a missing piece in her life, a shadow she couldn't explain. Could it really be true? The lawyer looked through the documents, his brow furrowed. "These are real," he said quietly. "But without a name, there's no way to know who or where he is." Emma stared at the papers, her heart heavy yet calm. She knew the truth might never be fully uncovered, but one thing was clear. Mr. Harlan had carried deep regrets and big secrets. And he had done his best, in the end, to make them right. Margaret stepped forward. Her voice was soft, but steady. "He made his choice. He trusted Emma. And now we owe it to him, and to each other, to move forward." Daniel didn't argue. The fight had drained from him. Maybe it was the truth, or maybe it was the quiet strength in Emma's presence. Either way, the storm was finally passing. The family gathered their things and left slowly, each lost in thought. Emma remained behind, alone with the box, the letters, and the weight of everything that had been revealed. She didn't know if the other sibling would ever be found. But she knew her father had seen her, not just as the maid or the quiet one, but as someone worthy of everything he had built. As she stepped outside into the sunlight, Emma felt peace for the first time in years. Not because of the inheritance, but because the truth had finally found its place. And now, so had she.